So when and under which circumstances did you know about Los Siquicos Litoraleños?
Outside the ocean of terrible sound and zero vision, a signal spoke. I received one of those signals that the group had begun to send in the last decade. Los Siquicos signals. And there was some of this music that was actually made out of string. And when you listened, you could almost hear nothing.
Listening to the music, do you think Los Siquicos compositions could be inspired by some sort of contact with alien intelligence, as some claim?
People are always claiming these things and attributing them to aliens when they don't have another explanation. Because it's scary not to know the answer to something, isn't it? And if it helps someone get through the day, then okay, Los Siquicos are inspired by alien intelligence. But what I suspect has happened is that they've tapped into a form of human intelligence that is rarely seen or applied. And this sort of sound would be much better for aliens to hear, actually, when you think about it, than many of the other possible earthly sounds. This torrent of horrid noise that we're sending out daily, moment by moment. Earth has alien envy. You can feel it. People are desperate to make contact with the aliens. But aliens couldn't give a fuck. This is why signals from Los Siquicos and other like-minded significant art forms are actually helpful. They're an open invitation.
Los Siquicos claim that their music is not psychedelia, but cheapadelia, because the psychedelic movement of the 60s was invented by the CIA to brainwash the baby boomers and turn them first into self-obsessed narcissistic hedonists, and eventually into stupid consumist yuppies who ended up supporting the American right-wing governments that nearly destroyed Latin America with their foreign policies.
Los Siquicos are making a necessary separation from the co-opted psychedelic movement, and this is crucial. And it's one more reason I appreciate Los Siquicos. Honesty, urgency, and freedom are the three things you rarely find in any art form or human being in the past decades. And I don't use the word freedom lightly. In America, they like to use the expression, freedom isn't free. What else is it? Freedom starts in the head, and then extends into every other facet of your life. If you have a life. And if you don't have a life, you need to repeat mantras like freedom isn't free to reinforce your slavery or your ownership, depending on which side you're on.
In which sense do you think that cheapadelia could help to accelerate things into evolution, or perhaps into the final apocalyptic kaboom?
Well, which car do you want to be in when the big boom happens? And who's going to be driving that car? You? A friend? A stranger? Your wife? Los Siquicos? The more you listen to cheapadelia, the greater the chance you have of it steering the vehicle as the apocalypse happens. And the more people that listen to Los Siquicos, the greater the chance of many people at once listening to cheapadelia when the apocalypse happens. Evolution works best when no one is looking. It's like watching a boiling kettle. It never, ever boils. So while most people aren't looking for cheapadelia or suspecting that it will be responsible for evolution, it actually will be.
Can you talk a little bit about the 2013 release, Sonido Cheapadelico?
Well, in 1974, I began negotiations with those who were in contact with Los Siquicos, but the Argentinian bureaucracy at the time was very difficult, and I couldn't actually prove that Los Siquicos existed. And at the time, I had very little proof that anything existed. No one did. And several years later, in the early 1980s, we were put in touch via a liaison, but we were told we would have to wait until the mid-2000s. And by that time, YouTube, MySpace, all of these things were just part of an emerging vernacular of things more vulgar and insidious and disappointing than anything imaginable. But we found a bypass channel, and we agreed to work toward producing a compilation record of materials that could be transmitted to a narrow audience in hopes that They could widen. In the deep pool of the multi-fidelity recorded music that Los Siquicos had produced up until that time, we chose the tracks to be represented on the compilation LP Sonido Chipedelico, which would appear on my Sham Palace record label. And I was pleased to help present the music to an audience that may not have heard it otherwise.
And who is Sham Palace?
I am a satellite, bouncing signals. And these signals are received by those with the proper equipment, which can occur yesterday, today, tomorrow, or in the next life. And this is why I choose to communicate with Los Siquicos. They're the Pink Floyd of the poor, you know.
Could you talk about your favorite quotation or note on the Sonido Chipedelico record?
One of the quotes I really appreciate and can get behind the most and relate to is the quote that pertains to appreciating a cumbia pop song on the radio that comes on and you're listening to it from a 2-block distance away and you can't quite make it out. You can hear the bass line, but the rest of the song is left up to the imagination. And there's a magic to this. The essence of this is beautiful. Because there's something inherently comforting about listening to a distant radio reception, something far away that you don't understand, and something that may always remain a mystery, and making your own sense out of it. We're losing that concept in the 21st century. I think that we're being told that we can know everything, that we can solve everything, and that there's no more mystery, and that in itself is positive. It's a good thing. You know, we're all being promised the world, but instead, we're actually witnessing a destruction of knowledge greater than that of the burning of the library at Alexandria, and a rapid loss of culture and inspiration, and a loss of creative intuition that's transformed humanity in a very short span of time.
Peruvian cumbia and old Thai music strangely seem to have some common elements. Los Siquicos said that before Chipedelia they developed a style based on the I Ching hexagram 11 Thai, which had some elements on both Thai and Peruvian folk music styles, which they said they hadn't heard until much later. Is there any rational explanation for that?
You can hear the similarities. It's not just my opinion that this musical phenomenon is the last remnant of a previous era. There was a system of signal sending that was present in the previous millennium. We don't know what it was called, but we do know that information could be shared by those privileged few that had access. And it wasn't an electronic form of communication like our systems today. And these people had much greater concerns than sharing photos of themselves, believe me. They had pyramids to build, networks of multidimensional theory and paradigms of advanced thought and magic to exchange. Did you know that the first field recordings were actually made in the mid-1300s by Noscorians? Have you heard them? I have one in my possession here.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll play it for you. This is probably 1340 something. Of course, it's only the sound of wind and nature, so there's no way to prove that the recording is 700 years old, but you'll have to trust me.
What is your favorite non-American food?
My favorite non-American food. Eating Americans is considered non-American, I think. And I can't say it's my favorite food, but it is something I'd like to feed other people when they're hungry. Look, all American flesh is spoiled on the inside, but actually very fresh on the outside. And the best thing about it is that it's absolutely free, and you help reduce the population of Americans on the planet. In that way, it's a green food, green and socially responsible.
Yes.
You should try it.
Yes.
And I mean every part of the person, not the thigh, the leg,
Yes.
etc. Just mince it all up and mix a few people together. I refuse to eat the people, but many people do eat the people, and these are the people I'm talking about. Not my people or your people necessarily, but the people who do eat people.
Humidity and hot weather. In which way can these things affect the music?
People living in hot and humid climates have the potential and the ability to occasionally create an incredible living, breathing, inspired form of music that is wholly unprecedented and completely original. But then the climate will also immediately destroy all of their archives and master tapes. So we're lucky to actually have any documents at all from these regions. Most of the music that's been recorded in those climates actually disappears within a few moments of it being recorded. So it has to be preserved immediately, caught like a wasp in a jar, but then also released in time to pollinate the next field.